Today, we're diving into a really fascinating corner of the financial world. It's a place where ancient principles are actually reshaping modern companies. We're going to look at how a specific set of rules, known as Sharia compliance, is completely changing how businesses think about money, risk, and even how they grow. And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. How can a framework that's rooted in centuries-old ethics create such a distinct and, you'll see, a surprisingly tough model for business in the 21st century? It's a great question, so let's get into it. All right, first things first, let's start with a basic truth. For pretty much any business out there, I don't care if it's big or small, you need money to make money, right? Whether you're trying to build a new factory or just launch an app, you've got to have capital to get that growth off the ground. Now, how a company gets that money? Well, that's what we call its capital structure. You can think of it as the financial DNA of the company. It's all about the mix of two key things: debt, which is money it borrows, and equity, which is money it gets from its owners and investors.
The easiest way to picture this is to think of a pie. One slice is the equity, that's the part the company owns free and clear. The other slice is the debt, that's the part it owes to somebody else. And believe me, deciding how big to make each of those slices is one of the most important decisions a company can make.
Okay, so now let's add a twist to the story. Because for a growing number of companies all over the world, the rulebook for how you build that financial pie looks totally different. Welcome to the world of Sharia-compliant finance. These principles create a whole different financial universe. Now, the big one, the one most people have heard of, is the ban on riba, or interest. That one rule completely changes the game for lending. But it goes way deeper than that. There's also this huge emphasis on sharing risk. So the bank and the business are in it together. It also means you have to avoid gharar. That's basically excessive gambling or speculation. The idea is to steer money toward real, tangible things and ethical businesses. And that ban on interest, it leads us straight to the single biggest difference in how these companies operate: their relationship with debt. It's a totally different philosophy. Think about it. For your typical company, debt is like fuel for the engine. It's a primary tool for growth, something you use strategically, even aggressively. But for a Sharia-compliant firm, nope. Interest-based debt is just off the table. That forces them to be much, much more conservative. It's not a tool, it's an absolute last resort. So what does this actually look like? Well, to keep their compliant status, these companies have a hard ceiling. Check this out. Their conventional debt can't be more than 33% of their total assets. That is a strict, non-negotiable line in the sand. And this chart just shows you the results perfectly. As you can see, because of those rules, Sharia-compliant firms consistently operate with much lower leverage, which is just a fancy word for debt levels, than everybody else. That gap you see, it isn't a small one. It's a massive difference that really defines who they are financially. Now, this low-debt, super conservative approach creates all these ripple effects. It doesn't just change a spreadsheet, it changes the entire rhythm of how the business makes decisions every single day. So how does that different rhythm actually play out? Well, the research is pretty clear. Because these companies just have fewer financing options, they can't just walk into a bank and get a standard loan. They adjust their financial mix way more slowly. If they need to raise money, the whole process is just more careful and, deliberate. In the business world, we're always taught that faster is better. Speed is everything. So when you hear slower, it just sounds like a weakness, right? A clear disadvantage. But what if it's not? What if there's another side to that coin? This is where the whole story gets really interesting. That cautious approach, the one that was born out of following these rules, might actually be a kind of hidden superpower, especially when the economy starts to go sideways. And here it is, a key takeaway right from the research. It turns out that carrying less debt and being forced to be more careful with your money makes these companies tougher. They are just built better to handle the shock of a sudden economic crisis. Let's break this down a bit more. When a crisis hits, those conventional firms, loaded up with debt, suddenly become incredibly vulnerable. Their sales might fall off a cliff, but guess what? Their debt payments don't change. Compare that to the Sharia-compliant firms. With less debt and more conservative habits, they just have more breathing room. As you can see here, it enhances their ability to act like a financial shock absorber. So let's wrap this all up. What have we learned? Well, first, Sharia compliance isn't just a label. It puts real, strict limits on debt. And that creates a very conservative financial culture. Second, that leads directly to lower debt levels. And that slower, more deliberate rhythm we talked about. And finally, and this is the really cool part, that supposed weakness can actually be a massive strength, making these companies way more resilient when things get tough.
And that really leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. We live in a world that feels more and more uncertain, full of unexpected shocks. And everyone is looking for ways to build more stable, more resilient businesses. The question is, could a set of principles from centuries ago actually hold the blueprint we need for the future? Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?